What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Maximus Keys back with a brand new episode of your favorite show, Genre Evolution. Before we start this episode, I need everyone to like, subscribe, and please share this video with everybody that you know. On this episode of Genre Evolution, we're going to be speaking about one of the earliest child stars in hip-hop of the early 90s, Shaheem aka The Rugged Child, and how he became a trendsetter at only the age of 14, and how his contributions help impact the history and culture of hip-hop. When we talk about young rappers in the game that help put on for the kids, some conversations will mention Crisscross if talking about the 90s. Or if you grew up in the early to mid 2000s like me, some conversations will probably mention Bow Wow or Lil Romeo. But if we're talking about early trendsetters that put on for the young kids in the 90s, we have to talk about Shyheim aka The Rugged Child, and who will also be known as the youngest member of the Wu-Tang Clan. Shaheem Franklin was born on November 14, 1979 in Staten Island, New York, growing up in the Stapleton Projects alongside his cousin Ghostface Killah. Shaheem would have a very heavy upbringing, growing up in the middle of the crack epidemic, his father serving 15 years in prison, and his mother being a longtime drug addict. Shaheem would fall in love with hip-hop culture at a young age because of his cousin Reddy Red, who used to write graffiti and would also embrace the new fashion within hip-hop culture. He would even witness young new rappers in the time of the 80s visiting Staten Island just to get a bite to eat, and one of them also happened to be MC Lyte. He would be inspired to rap soon after and would become acquainted with Mercury from the Force MDs, who was actually friends with Shaheem's mother. Mercury would hear a young Shaheem rap for the first time and would briefly mentor him. Mercury would introduce Shaheem to the recording studio for the first time, where he recorded his first song, That's Why the Girls Love Shaheem, which was basically a remix version of Oh We Love You Rakim by the RZA before he was known as the RZA. Mercury would even end up letting Shaheem open up for different rap groups at his block parties. Very soon, RZA and ex-Wu-Tang producer RNS would end up being interested in young Shaheem, and they would end up even letting him record demos at their home studios. And this was the time when Shaheem was accepted as a member of the Wu-Tang camp. And one of the songs that came from the recording sessions was a song that he wrote himself called Bad Little Bastard. And it was during that time bracket Shaheem was around the ages of 12 and 13. Bad Little Bastard will be the demo that would change Shaheem's life forever. A group that was affiliated with the Wu-Tang Clan called GP.4 at the time were trying to get a deal with Virgin Records. While playing a GP.4 demo at the Virgin Records office, the tape would end up playing Shaheem's demo Bad Little Bastard by accident during the meeting. And at the time they thought Shaheem was a little girl just because of how high his voice was. After it was established that he was a little boy, Virgin Records would end up signing Shaheem right away, and Shaheem would end up leaving with a $350,000 check in his pocket. This will make Shaheem the first Wu-Tang MC to ever have his own solo deal before anybody connected to the Wu-Tang brand. Even though Shaheem was the very first to have his own solo deal, he didn't release his debut record right away. However, he did make a small cameo on the Cream music video by the Wu-Tang Clan, and you can see him repping the logo on his hat. Also, back in 1993 when Wu-Tang released the 36 Chambers record, RZA would give a young Shaheem a shout out on the record on a track called Clan in the Front, acknowledging him as a Wu-Tang member. Shaheem's name is also on the back of the record if you read it too. Shaheem's logo is also seen on the Heaven and Hell music video by Raekwon and Ghostface from 1995. And Shaheem also makes a cameo on the Raekwon music video, Ice Cream. Shaheem will release his debut record, aka The Rugged Child, on April 19, 1994. And it would feature production from ex-Wu-Tang producer RNS and one track produced by the RZA. The record would even feature members of the Wu-Tang family tree, GP.4. And the singles that will become the most successful from the record will be Pass It Off featuring GP.4 and his most classic hit, On and On. On and On is arguably one of his most transparent songs that he has ever made throughout his whole entire career. He would speak in deep context saying, "Times is getting hard, word is born, I swear to God. I even got caught trying to steal from the junkyard. A born terror, a rebel without a pause. I never had a good Christmas, so who was Santa Claus?" Shaheem was only 14 at the time, writing lyrics like this, speaking on his own livelihood, and even speaking on street politics. The record became successful, hitting number 52 on the Billboard Top 200 and number 7 on the top R&B and hip-hop albums charts. The album was given 4 out of 5 mics on the Source magazine back in 1994, right under Nas's Illmatic. The same year of 1994, Shaheem would release a brand new remix of his song One's for the Money, and this song was based on the original song from AKA The Rugged Child. However, it was more radio friendly, and plus Shaheem was going through puberty at the time. And he would also be a featured actor on the Waterfalls music video by TLC, and he will also be featured on the track with Dougie Fresh and Lil Vicious on a track called Life of a Shorty, which would be more of a reggae party song. And Shaheem will also be featured on a track with Big Daddy Kane, Old Dirty Bastard, Sauce Money, Scoob, and Jay-Z on a track called Show Improved by Big Daddy Kane, off of his album Daddy's Home. He would also show up on the morning show anthem of 1994 for Sway and King Tech. He would rhyme alongside Lauryn Hill, Ras Kass, Nas, Organized Confusion, and Saphir. And I think it's safe to say that 1994 was his year. Then a year later in 1995, Shaheem would be featured on a live freestyle on stage, rhyming with his peers Biggie Smalls, Tupac, Big Daddy Kane, and Scoob, which would end up being one of the most historical, epic moments in hip-hop culture, especially with the fact that Shaheem wasn't even close to being 18 yet. Biggie Smalls would even give Shaheem a shout out off of his Ready to Die album, which was actually released in 1994. In 1996, Shaheem will release his second studio record titled The Lost Generation under the Virgin label New Tribe Records. And a lot of Wu-Tang fans even considered this record being better than his first achievement. Singles that would come from the record would be This Is Real and Shaolin Style, which would feature Squig Trust, and a cameo on the video by Method Man. The record also featured a young girl group from the mid to late 90s called 702 on a track called Don't Front, Let's Chill. Shaheem would even open up on his mental state of mind, his depression, and also speaking about street terminology, only this time the rugged child was becoming more rugged by day. A couple of songs off the Lost Generation record which would actually lead towards that observation would be my favorite song, Real Bad Boys, and another song called Dear God. Dear God would be somewhat of a prayer.
I know that I'm a sinner, but God help me out, nigga. I got problems that only death can solve. I high school dropout, and my GED won't get me no job.
The record will also feature members from the Wu-Tang family tree such as GP Wu, RZA, Ninth Prince from Wu-Tang's Killer Army, Killer Sin, Raekwon the Chef, and other artists such as DV alias Christ, Smooth the Hustler, and Trigger the Gambler. Both RZA and RNS were involved production-wise. However, producers such as Peter Lord, the King of Chill, V. Jeffrey Smith, Tone Capone, LES, and DR Period contributed to the production of the record as well. The record would end up hitting number 63 on the Billboard Top 200 and number 10 on the top R&B and hip-hop charts. That same time, he would also be featured on a track called Worldwide with two French rappers by the name of Raphael and Laucha. And it was already by the time of his career in 1996 when Shaheem started merging within the R&B community. He would end up mixing that Loverboy flow with some of his underground flow from his previous records. He was able to score features from his label mates such as Immature in 1996 on a remix called Lover's Groove, and he was even featured on a remix by Quentin Tarver called It's You That's On My Mind in 1996. He also made a cameo on a Quentin Tarver music video, which was a remix to the song Dream About You. And he will also be featured on a remix of a song called Blackberry Molasses by the group Mista. And to add on to that discography, he was also featured on a track called Sugar Honey Iced Tea, which was a remix by a group called Goodfellas. The same year, he would be featured on a movie called Original Gangsters, where he would play a character named Wordman.
I live on the streets, you know, and sometimes I get messed with.
He would even be featured on the film The Preacher's Wife alongside with Whitney Houston and Denzel Washington. A year later in 1997, he will be a featured character on the Robert Townsend directed show The Parenthood on season 3. He would play a character named Sky, a young rapper hoping to make it in the music industry one day. And he would also make a feature appearance on the 702 album No Doubt on a track called Word Is Born, released the same year of 1997. And would also score another feature with his Wu-Tang family, a part of Wu All-Stars, on a song called Soul in the Hole, featuring Wu-Tang singer Takitha, Killer Sin, and other MCs such as Timbo King and Dreddy Kruger. And unfortunately, that same year, Shaheem would get his face cut by a random person at a Staten Island club with a box cutter. He would even explain in an interview how he surrounded himself with the wrong people, which makes sense because at the time he was young and he had some money in his pocket. In 1998, Shaheem will be featured on the Wu-Tang compilation project The Swarm on a single called Codefendant, which featured Hellraiser from Wu-Tang Sons of Man. And it will be that song that actually became one of the more successful singles off of the record. And in 1999, Shaheem will be featured on the movie In Too Deep alongside with LL Cool J, Omar Epps, and Nia Long. In that same year, Shaheem will release his third studio album titled Manchild under Wu-Tang Records. The single that would come from the record would be Manchild. However, the single that gained the most respect was a song called Furious Anger, which featured Big L, who was assassinated the same year of the album release. Manchild would also be a storytelling phenomenon, which spoke on his mindset of him being an adult, but still feeling like a child. The song would also feature Takitha. And other underrated singles from the record would be Unconditional Love, which actually featured Ray J and Twin Glocks. There were even cameos on the record from Lil Vicious and Method Man as well, and the album was also executive produced by the RZA. In 2001, Shaheem will be featured on a brand new compilation Wu-Tang project called Wu Chronicles, and Wu Chronicles will be an ongoing series throughout the 90s and early 2000s. He would have his own single on the record titled In Trouble, and he would also be featured on another single from the record called Re-Up, which featured Two on the Road. Then it was a year later when things started to spiral out of control for Shaheem. In 2002, Shaheem was sentenced to a year in prison after a second-degree attempted robbery. Very soon after serving time, he would come back into the world and start releasing more music. He would release projects from 2004 to 2009, and just to name a few, he would release The Greatest Story Ever Told, Enter the Bottom, Disrespectfully Speaking, The Bottom of New York, and plenty other projects as well. And it would also be by the time of the 2000s where Shaheem started beefing with his Wu-Tang brother, Raekwon the Chef, and he ended up releasing a diss track towards Raekwon called Hold That Thought Fat Boy. And they wouldn't reconcile their differences until years later. Shaheem would speak on the situation during a Drink Champs interview saying, "I had big expectations, and in my mind, I thought that Raekwon and Wu-Tang should have been doing more for me. I wasn't looking for a handout, but I was still immature, and I didn't realize where he was in life as a man. How I handled it was very immature and kiddie of me. Once I started to come into my own understanding, I gave him a sincere apology." By 2014, Shaheem turned himself into the authorities after a hit-and-run incident which would end up leaving somebody dead on the scene. Shaheem would try to get away from somebody who was trying to kill him, which unfortunately caused a collision. And by that time, Shaheem was sentenced to 14 years in prison. And it was during that time where Shaheem started to fix himself. And it was after he would change his life in prison, he would only have to serve 5 years. Shaheem was released from prison on January 6, 2020, and it was after he would be released from prison, the hip-hop community will welcome him with open arms. And his Wu-Tang family would even welcome him with open arms as he would step on stage during a Wu-Tang concert in 2020. He would start mentoring the youth, he would get interviewed by almost every hip-hop platform. He would start his own brand, have his own podcast show called Rugged Road to Recovery, and would even get back to his music. One of the songs that he would release in 2020 would be a song called Shaheem Blues, which would feel almost like a full circle moment with him speaking the real like he always has. And he still continues to release music to this recent day. And he was even given the Legacy Award in New York City. Shaheem is a bona fide legend that has put on for the young kids in the 90s and was also able to be the representation for young kids around that time that went through the same struggles as him and wrote his own rhymes. Shaheem is a major contributor to the culture of hip hop, and if you don't understand it, then I guess you never will. Thank you so much for watching this video. I am so glad that you guys made it to the end of this video. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments and tell me what your favorite Shaheem song is. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.